Consuming political news. All right, so I'm going to give you some of my thoughts on consuming political news. Now, this may or may not be polarizing. Seems like politics generally is pretty polarizing. It's almost like that's the nature of politics is to be polarizing. But anyway, um, so at some points in my life, in the not so distant past, I have consumed quite a bit of political news, kind of like almost like sports talk. It's like kind of like watching to see how your favorite team is doing. Are they winning? Like what kind of score do they have? That's probably the way I've kind of tended to consume political news somewhat. So I'm personally right leaning, in case you were wondering, and so I'm interested to see what's going on. I have a bit of a libertarian streak, and so um, kind of interested to see where the things are getting more or less authoritarian or whatever. So um, I think the problem is, well, anyway, so I consume a lot less political content now on average than I did before. I still do some. The Patrick Bet David show, PBD. I do enjoy some of those segments, and I used to listen to Rising on the Hill quite a bit, and also some Breaking Points, and so shows that some of those shows would. I guess the thing that all of them have in common probably is that they all have some diversity of views on the show, right? It's not just purely right wing or left wing echo chamber in theory, Now, to be fair, I think in some way you could argue that really kind of more or less a single viewpoint that kind of gets like breaking points, for instance. It's almost like they kind of created this hybrid view that they have almost more than actually opposing viewpoints, if you will. But whatever the case, so consuming political news. Um, so I don't know. I may go back to listening to more. I probably will some more. With this being an election year, I probably will listen to some more news again. Um, that can be enjoyable, but there's a couple problems. One is there's nothing I can do. There's not nothing. There's maybe not a lot that I can do to directly impact the outcome of current events in political sphere. Now, I could be doing more than I'm doing. That is for sure. But at this point, I don't feel like I have a lot of say or a lot of sway in the outcome of most political events, aside from, of course, the avenue of prayer. But in terms of the avenue of like going out and really influencing people, it seems pretty limited. So in that regard, you could say I'm kind of consuming information without a purpose to take action myself, if you will. Now, you could also say that's the same when it comes to my sports news consumption as well. So there is that. Um, but I think listening to political news in the with the idea of becoming more informed and being able to pray more strategically, I think is potentially a valid point. And I don't necessarily, I don't totally, I don't have a major problem with consuming political news for entertainment either. The Probably if I could find, how shall we say, the thing about political news that's maybe a little bit of a catch 22 for me is that I do like to hear some different perspectives, but I don't want to become like the people who have the poor perspectives. So I don't necessarily want to absorb, like if you have a rather secular, godless sort of person who's spouting off stuff about the news, I don't want to become that person. Like their perspective could be interesting to contrast against a person whose perspective I do agree with, but I don't want to become that person just by the person that I don't agree with just by virtue of listening to them. So there is something I think to be said about when it comes to entertainment that it's a form of spending time with people, and it's pretty well documented that the people you spend time with do influence your outlook and your behaviors. I would say so. That's probably the biggest drawback to a lot of the political news, in my view, is, well, besides the fact, of course, that may be really wrong, is the potential to become like the people you're listening to without consciously trying to, if that person is not someone that you want to become like. So, there are my deeply profound thoughts on listening to the news. What are yours?